is called TKinter, but it's spelled with an I, I-N-T-E-R, for like interface. And I really don't know what the TK stands for. From TKinter, import asterisk. It's going to bring everything in. That way we don't have to prefix everything with TKinter. We don't have to say like A is equal to TKinter dot, button, whatever. Instead, we can just say A is equal to button. Now, for some reason, this syntax goofs, and there may be one thing that we have to import explicitly in order for it to work. But anyways, so what are we going to do? We're going to define our window. The window is where everything is drawn. So if we do this, WN is equal to TK, like that. And then I'm going to create a frame that goes into that window. And there's more than one window manager. There's one called the grid, and the grid is actually cooler than the method that I'm doing now, but I'm going to go with this for now. So we need to create a frame and attach it to that window. It's probably going to drive me nuts that I just called it WN, so I'm going to call it that. And then every time I add something to my window or add something to my frame, I have to call pack. What pack does is it organizes it and actually puts it in there. So f1.pack.
What was that? What's pack do again? I'm sorry.
Well, that's a darn good question.
Yeah, I just got
so pack uses the options, determines if the widget, it sets it visible, actually, is what it does. It's what we do. Think of it as if every time you bought groceries, you had to put them into the fridge, and pack just puts them in the fridge so that they're visible for you. And until then, they're not visible for you.
Okay.
So there'll be examples of if I forget to call pack, I won't be able to see the button that I just created. And so we may run across those accidentally.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that Anaconda took it right away to install the package. Less TKinter or Tinker or whatever. It's just part of Python.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we're going to create an integer, a number, so that we can have it interact with the user interface. And they made a special class as part of the TKinter interface to represent numbers, and another one for strings, so that they can directly interact with the objects that are on the screen. So they're more specialized in the integers that Python uses. So we're going to say I1 is equal to, and then capital INT VAR, integer variable, parentheses in parentheses. And we're going to give it a value. I1.set, parentheses 0. You can kind of see that they have that data encapsulation idea going on there. We probably, when we created it, could have set it equal to 0 like that. That would be my guess. I'm going to leave that alone now. Well, heck, I'm going to go ahead and run it as is. Start a new one of these because it's scrolling off the bottom. Right, okay. And if you want to get the value out of that integer, guess what you're going to do? You're going to call .get, right? So if I wanted to just print out the value of I1, I could call this. I'm going to delete that because there's no reason to get it at this point. Just to remind ourselves that since there's a .set, there's also going to be a .get. And let's see if my hunch is true, that if we actually pass in a number here and then we get it, it'll be that number that we passed in. Nope. The init method does not take. What do you know? Okay, so you can't initialize it with the init method. You actually have to set it like that. Good enough. Now we're going to create a label, which is a place on the screen that will hold the contents of that variable. So I'm just going to call it lab1 for label 1 is equal to label with a capital L. They're following the convention of all classes beginning with uppercase letters. And I want this label to be a part of frame 1. And the variable that I want it to display is that integer variable. So text variable, no spaces, no underscores, no caps, equals I1. And I'm going to give it a width. Width equals 20. And I'm going to give it a background color. BG, I'm making it too fancy, but it's just to show you. BG equals quote black and quote, whoops. And a foreground color. FG equals yellow, end quote, in parentheses. All right, so this label has a constructor and a knit method that'll take all of these things. And if you leave off the BG setting and the FG setting and whatever, it has default values that it will use, but we're allowed to override them. So it has those default values that we're allowed to override. So that's an example of what I was trying to show, you know, in our first name equals and our last name equals, things like that. And then we have to pack it. Now that we've added something to our frame, which we did by specifying F1 there, we have to pack it. So lab1.pack. So let's run it now. And there's our interface, right? It's got a number in it. That's all it's got, but it's got a number. Now, label means a label, right? It's not an interactive thing. We're not going to be able to type in our own number and override that one. That's a different control. Let's make a new label, a different label. I'm just going to copy this one and paste it and call it lab2. I'm probably going to delete this in a minute, but lab2.pack. But I'm going to make this one's background yellow and his foreground color black, right? Just so I can differentiate between the two. Well, there they are, right? Our two labels. We can see them. What if we did not want them left and right? We might want them side by side. Well, when we packed it, we could have done this. Side is equal to right in all caps. And this one, we could have done side is equal to left, all caps. Now I'm going to create a different frame and add it to our window because the window will support multiple frames. F2 equals frame with a capital F and attach it to that window. So parentheses WIN. F2.pack. I2 equals, and let's make it a string, a text variable, right? S1 equals string var, parentheses in parentheses. S1 dot set, parentheses, hello, end quote, in parentheses. Now we need to create a label that'll take that string and put it on the screen. So label 3 equals label. The syntax is going to be very similar, but I'm attaching it to frame 2. The text variable is S1. I'm not going to even specify width. I'm going to leave it all, the rest of it by default, just to see what happens. And then lab3.pack. So make it show up on the screen. right? And so the second frame started out underneath the first one. So that's kind of how we can arrange things in rows, is we can make each row its own frame.
Okay. Oh, one moment. Let me see. Okay, because I'm just kind of a little bit behind you. The hack is literally we're displaying that information. This one. So, okay. Where did mine pop up at? Um,
So you run it and you just don't see it on the screen.
yeah. Yeah, it says process finished with exit code 0, which is, I think, the exit code that would.
All right, then try adding this to the bottom, window.main loop.
Ft.pack. Let's see. So ft dot frame when pack left side. Oh, okay. I need to change this. Okay, I have one thing that needs to be changed. So that should display both pack frame ft dot pack screen hello label 3. Okay, F2. Okay, let's see if this works now. What's what I got? Yeah, okay, yeah, now it's popping. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it was just exiting and PyCharm was terminating it immediately when it got to the end. And so what main loop does is it causes the window, it causes the execution of this script to hang, which sounds bad, to pause until the window has been dismissed. So PyCharm was just saying, okay, you've hit the end of the execution, then I'm going to end everything. So it wasn't displaying it for you.
So basically that just says, hey, keep it open until I tell you to close it.
Right. And so if I have a print statement here, I'm not going to see that until I close the window. Then it prints goodbye.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, displaying information on the screen is all well and good, but we want to do a button. So let's create a button. Are we going to create a new frame for it, or are we just going to stick it underneath that other number? I don't know that let's create a new frame for it. F3 equals frame when F3.pack. And now for our button. B1 equals button, frame 3, F3, comma, text equals, I don't know, up, end quote, comma, command equals click up. We're going to have to write a function called click up. And let's make it a button that's 20 wide. So width equals 20. And let's make another button that says down. B2 equals button, F3, comma, text equals quote down, end quote, comma, command equals click underscore down, comma, width equals 20. And they're not going to show up until we pack them. So b1.pack, and let's send button 1 to the left and button 2 to the right. So pack this one, side equals left, and b2.pack, side equals right. Now we don't really have this function. I'm not even sure it'll compile until we add the click up and click down functions, but it might, as long as we don't actually call them. Yep, click up is not defined. Okay, so just to get it to compile, we're going to have to add 2 functions that do that. And it's the wrong place to define them in the middle of the code, right? But just for now. And then another one called click down. So this is defining a callback function, meaning that when we click the button is going to call our function. So this sets up, some languages call it an event listener. The button is sitting there listening for itself to be clicked, and when it is, it's going to invoke the click up function. Now, it might look like we need to put parentheses here. It's a function, right? You need to put our parentheses there. No, the reason why is because if we put our parentheses, it's a function call, and it immediately will execute it, right? Rather than setting up the callback. So we just specify the name of the function. Yeah, width. What line number is that on? 41? Look, I have line numbers just like a real code editor.
Read in, not the F3. F3 is one path to F3 3.
All right, and so there's our user interface, right? And so whenever we click, whenever we click up, it's going to print up, and whenever we click down, it's going to print down.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to make a slight diversion off the topic just for a second about the idea of the callback functions. You do something like this, x equals print, and then you do x hello. That calls the print function with that argument. So you can remap the names of functions if you want to. So, you know, I could say y is equal to click down. And then when I actually call click, that's the only time it's going to print down, right? So the mere act of assigning the function pointer to a variable doesn't invoke the function, but then when you call it, it does. Just like when we did x is equal to print, that did not call the print function, but this did. And the reason I'm hammering in on that is just so you can kind of visualize behind the scenes what's happening there with this is that we are passing in a function reference as an argument. So like what if we did something like this? We had a function called doIt. And then as soon as it ran, it called whatever function was passed in with an argument like that. And so if we do call doIt and we pass in print, it's going to print 1 to the screen. And so it did. So you can use references to functions like that. You can pass them in as arguments so that the code then can call them, just like this one called the print function because it was called in as print. Now, if you passed in another name, right, it's not going to print it. Instead, it would just call float on it, which would convert it to a number, and we wouldn't see the results, so it would have no visible output. Now, let's get rid of all that. Let's make click up and click down actually do something interesting, like change the value of the numbers, right? We have this good old number, I1.
One second. I'm missing some parts. Yeah. So set. I have left 3. Okay, so under left 3, I need the F3. Okay, F3. Brain. Brain. When 3. Okay. Now I have all of our stuff there. All right.
So we're good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. So let me make sure I didn't break anything by adding and removing all that. So what I want up to do is actually to modify the value of that I1 variable so that we see that number increase when we click up. And then I want to see the down button decrease its value. So that's what we're going to make the click function do. So the value is equal to I1.get, right? Get the value of that integer, add 1 to it, val plus equals 1, and then set it, I1.set ourselves to the new value. So we're pulling the integer out of its little wrapper, of its fancy int var wrapper. So we're getting it out of there, we're updating it, and we're setting it. And that updates the label automatically. That's why they created the int var class, is so that you could have numbers that will interact with components on the screen. So all you have to do is change that variable, and then the user interface will modify itself to display the contents of that variable. So we don't have to do anything weird like call some kind of redraw method on label 2 so to get it to actually redisplay the contents. It does that automatically. Once we change the value of that variable, since that variable has been bound to the labels like that, changing the value of that I1 variable will cause the labels to redraw, which is good news. All right, and then this one's just going to do the same thing except lower it. So I'm going to just copy those lines and paste them. But I don't want clicking to add. I want it to subtract, right?
So once again, when we're updating these I1.set val, since that's updating, it okay, because the text variable equals I1, it re-updates all that I1, right?
Exactly. We initialized I1 to be 0. And so when we call .get, it's going to equal 0. So we're going to add 1 to val, and val now equals 1. And then we're going to reset the value of the I1 control to 1. And each time we do that, each time we click 1, click up, it's going to keep continually increasing the value of it.
This. I got line 13, invalid syntax, define click, screw up,
You want to share your screen to me?
yeah.
All right.
Right here, not.
Oh, parentheses before the colon.
Oh, yeah. Why was it working earlier, though?
Yeah, that's a mystery. How could it possibly have worked? Well, anyways, okay.
Yeah, because it was running before when they have this up here, it was running without that.
That's wild. I can't understand how that would have worked.
Yeah, let's see if I go back to this because it was Yeah, so right here, let's see, rename element mount scope. Let me try this again. Maybe I don't know, because let's see here. Yeah, okay, maybe when I did this, I may have, I don't know, it was working 2 seconds ago.
Yeah. Well,
I,
we know it's part of the syntax, but why it was working is an interesting question. But yeah, go ahead and get it.
yeah, because I had the button up on screen.
Yeah.
That was when we were clicking up and clicking down. PyCharm's really good at flagging all the little like reformat files, boom, then it says shadows X from outer scope.
And
So,
you know why it's doing that, but that's okay.
but we've been over it like 1,000 times, but I always forget how fix it.
Put everything into a main.
Yeah.
If we took all of this code that we had added and we wrote it and we put it inside a main function instead, it would fix that kind of thing. And really, of course, these things should be defined up here at the top of the code rather than in the code, but it's convenient to have them there. So if we run it,
Because mine start off with -1 and 1. If I go up, yeah, go up.
so it's silly to have two different controls that are reflecting the same value. We probably would have wanted to pick, two different control variables. I mean, two integers, right? I1 and I2.
Yep.
But this is just for funsies.
Yeah, I mean, like it can make sense. Like, so if you're taking like a head count, like 3 people came in, 1 person left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this does
Mine?
not allow us to change any of the fields. It lets us display them, but we haven't written a way to change any of them yet. And that requires a different control, not the label control. Labels are for labeling, but they do not allow input-output.
So do you know why mine's starting at -1 versus 0 0? So so if I run
Check
mine,
to see how you initialized it. Did you initialize it to 0?
yeah, I1.set 0.
In that case, somewhere you have a call to down that I probably deleted. Remember when I deleted that extra code when I was demonstrating storing function pointers, and I probably did something like click down like that?
Let me
You'll have
see.
a reference to click down in your code. And so it's calling click down and subtracting 1 from value or from I1.
Because that button, just click up, button click down, no parentheses, so it's not executing. Oh, yep. Y click down. Yep. So it's calling it right there.
Right.
Okay. So I kind of like when I have errors like that because then I go back, look at it.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So we need to, and rather than having, I want to add something so that I can actually type into it. That's my goal. Remind myself how to do it before I blunder.
Heck, if you have this recorded, this could be your
Yeah,
next.
I think I'll post this as a lecture telling that I want people to go ahead and watch it. So we need, all right, so the control that lets us actually edit text is not label, it's entry. So let's add one more frame. I think we're up to 4 now. F4 is equal to frame based on window. You can have more than one window on the screen, by the way. When I created that window up here, With that, I could create a second window with another, like a WIN2,
Okay.
and have them interact with each other. Okay, so let's create an entry, an input field. So E1 equals entry based on that frame. And as always, we got to pack it.
So E1 dot
But I think I want to specify that it's associated with a variable. Let's give this a shot. I'm blue skying this one. But what if I create another integer? Did I ever create an I2? How about I2 is equal to int var, parentheses in parentheses, I2 dot set myself to the value of 1, 2, 3. And then when I create my entry, can I set its text variable equal to I2? Text variable equals I2. And then can I pack it? I don't know why I made that a capital E. Let's find out. I'm not seeing my control. Did I never pack my frame? Right, I created the frame and I forgot to pack it.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you have to pack entry. Basically, if you want to see it, you need to pack it, right?
Exactly. And there we go. See, here's our number. 1, 2, 3. Now we could make the up and the down button add this number to the contents rather than add 1 to it. So let's write one more button that'll do that. So let's put this number on the left and then make a button that's going to be on the right. So I'm going to push him over to the left like that. Now another button. B3 is equal to button based on frame 4. And his text is equal to add. And his command is going to be click add. And his width is going to be 20. I don't even know if I have to specify width. It'll probably just fill all available space if I don't, and that would be okay. Got to pack it. And we're going to stick the button on the right side of that input field. So side equals right. But we have reference to a function that we haven't defined. So let's do that. Define click underscore add. And so we're going to get the value of that integer out. Well, let's just print add first. But let's get that value out. The integer currently equals whatever, I1 dot get, right? And so we're going to add but then we also need the value of I2, which is what we're going to add to I1. So how about we say val1 is equal to I1 dot get, val2 is equal to I2 dot get. So then we're going to add val2, comma, quote 2, end quote, comma, val1, just to let us know that. So we see something on the user interface, even if nothing did actually update, we will at least see something get displayed to the console. Okay. And let's update 1, right? val1 plus equals val2. And now we need to re-update I1 with its new value, right? Because we changed val1, so we need to set I1 equal to its new value. I1.set val 1. Tell you what, I'm going to get rid of that part and just make it set I1 is equal to val 1 plus val 2. Now you'll see people do things like this. I'm going to type it and I'm going to delete it. But we probably could have done this all in one line like this. Set the value of I1 to I1.get plus I2.get, right? That'd be a totally legal way of doing it. And if it looks clearer to you, then you could do that.
Oh, okay, I see. I1 dot set this. Okay, because you're setting the addition to get. Okay.
Right.
No, that makes sense. Like doing it all three ways. This one.
All right. Might work. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to try to add 1, 2, 3 to it. And it worked. All right. So there's another way of displaying things besides using the frame pack command. It's called a grid. And I find it easier to use. But this one lets me go kind of free form. And so I demonstrated it first. And so when we do the lecture for real on Tuesday, I'll introduce the other method as well. But I'm going to need to stop. So once you get this working, then I'm going to need to ask us to stop.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Could you run yours one last time?
Sure.
Just so we started with when then we go okay 0 0. Then we click the add button. We should be at 123. Okay. Then we can go up, add say to 130. We click add again and get 253. Okay.
Right.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, mine's all working. Yeah. Thanks. Cool. This is really I like this. This is
yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I like the fact that we stayed and did this. Now I can just take this and like run from here with it.
Yeah.